Good morning. My name is Scott Galloway. I'm a clinical professor here at the Stern School and the founder of L2. We appreciate your time this morning. We're going to talk about the death of the advertising industrial complex. We believe that the disruption about to take place in the media industry is going to disproportionately affect television, specifically television advertising, and that the value chain of how brands are being built is being reshaped. And we always like to caveat our presentations where we make a lot of forward-looking predictions with the following. The most hype any of our presentations have gotten, or received I should say, was about a year and a half ago where we boldly predicted that Amazon would decline in value. And as soon as we made this prediction, and this is the stock price, immediately this is what happened to the stock. And so the first observation is we get it wrong all the time. I hope most of this is right, but I know some of it is wrong. So with that, we think there's a new order taking place. And to summarize, we believe that the sun has passed midday on brand. And the majority of great shareholder value, or above market shareholder value, returned to the markets in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was an average beer, an average car, an average suit with great associations wrapped around it that made you feel more American, more elegant, more European, younger. And this was the algorithm for building brands. The land masses are growing, and the ocean of the unknown is decreasing. Why? We have these bridges of due diligence called Amazon reviews. We have these weapons of discovery and diligence in the form of TripAdvisor, in the form of Google. You now no longer need to defer to brands. So as a result, wealthy consumers no longer have a favorite brand. The percentage of consumers, wealthy consumers, that can identify their favorite brand across key categories in consumer has declined by somewhere between 1/3 and 50%. Favorite brand is no longer on the tip of your tongue because their favorite brand is going to be whatever Google tells you at that moment matches your exact needs. The tools of discovery have turned from broadcast to Amazon. That would probably be the way to distill it, and a series of other diligence tools. Included in that series, that selection set, is also the store. The store is still number one in terms of influencing a purchase. A personal example, I love hotels. I travel to hotels, not to cities, when I'm on vacation. David Bowie dies. There's a series of photographs talking about his life, and I noticed that one of the photographs with his wife is at the opening or the reopening of a hotel in Paris called Le Bon. And I'm always looking for a hotel in Paris, and I see that this hotel has just reopened. I go on to TripAdvisor, I go on to Tablet Hotels, and I book the hotel and have the confidence based on user-generated content, and also doing a quick search on Facebook of my social graph, seeing that people I trust have stayed there recently. Now, what is the industry that is ripe for this type of disruption, that is on the wrong end of this change in diligence? It's absolutely television. Television has raised its prices faster than inflation with no underlying increase in productivity. The fastest way to discern whether or not you are ripe for disruption is to look at your prices, look at inflation, and if the gap in between the two hasn't been filled by innovation, you are ripe for disruption. Think about technology. Technology's gestalt is every year we're going to massively increase the productivity and innovation, and we're going to decrease the price. Whereas the majority of people in this room work for companies that want to raise prices as fast as possible, oftentimes setting themselves up for massive disruption. People are cutting the cord. Cable is in trouble. Fewer households have cable. And who's cutting the cord? Wealthy people. Wealthy young, the ones that are technologically sophisticated, the ones that have choices. As a result, the consumers that brands most desperately want to reach are the ones who are exiting the ecosystem. You can see it in the ratings of broadcast or ad-supported TV, which are declining. Imagine working for A&E or MTV right now and waking up. A lot of people in this room talk about their businesses being tough. These businesses are down 23 and 28% year on year. That is a meltdown. You can't cut costs that fast when your revenues are down 28% from where they were just a short 4 quarters ago. Why? People are moving to over-the-top services. If you look at the annual growth rate of cable subscription or ad-supported media, it's in decline, whereas we are watching more over-the-top, uninterrupted television. These are outstanding programming. Great content, great acting, great scripts, but they also have the benefit of not being interrupted by advertising. The storytelling of Game of Thrones, the storytelling of Homeland, the storytelling of Transparent is totally interrupted. Broadcast television is cursed with being a swimmer, and every 11 minutes someone takes a dump in the pool. You literally get interrupted by something that is shocking, is ugly, makes no sense, is disturbing, is totally out of context, and you literally have to stop swimming and go, what is going on here? What's happening here? And then 2 minutes later, you start swimming again. Would Transparent be an Emmy Award winner just with commercials? So you see all the over-the-top programs are growing, whereas all the ad-supported media is in decline. And this is largely true across the board, and it's also happening in Europe. Netflix users say, 3/4 of them say they would cancel if there was any advertising on Netflix. Now, some of that's probably dramatic. It's probably more like a third or maybe a half. But still, a lot are saying that the key value of Netflix is that it is totally free from ads. Social senses blood in the water. Social senses that the $70 billion hemorrhaging, bleeding carcass of television advertising and the need for these brands to reach young affluence has not gone anywhere. So they've popped up and said to the largest advertisers, hey, we're here. The wealthy young people are on our networks, and we have new video products that can service your needs and reach those consumers who you can no longer reach across the traditional vehicles. The shift is huge. We see ad dollars coming out of traditional media and going into social and video. Ad blocking, I believe that essentially advertising has become a tax that the poor and the technologically illiterate pay. I believe if you're wealthy, you can opt out of advertising. Wealthy cities, wealthy country, wealthy people can avoid advertising. Think about your own media habits. You are opting out of this terrible world of advertising. A decent proxy for a survival of media companies is the percentage of revenue they are getting from subscription versus advertising. The New York Times gets the majority of its revenue from subscription. People will pay up to $1,100 to get the New York Times delivered to their house if they live in a rural area because the content is differentiated and outstanding, and they will survive. Media companies that are totally dependent upon advertising are vulnerable because that engine, that sword, that Valerium steel is getting duller and duller every day. Advertisers and media companies don't value us. This is the total amount that Business Insider is able to monetize me. I love Business Insider. It's my first and my last read of the day. That's what they are getting for load, reload, crap, garbage, reload. 55 cents every year per individual. They do not respect us. The New York Times gets $2.64 in advertising revenue for every individual. And by the way, these numbers are probably a lot lower because we're assuming a monthly unique visitor. The denominator is bigger here. Modern Family is getting about 43 cents a user. They can monetize the 7 million people that watch this show to the tune of 43 cents. So what's going to happen? Similar to the reason you are giving more in gratuity now to cab drivers and at coffee places because they've made it easy for you to pay for gratuity. The same thing is about to happen in the world of advertising, and that is these companies, these great content companies, are going to figure out a way to put a button in front of you that says, hey, do you want to pay 55 cents and avoid advertising? Do you want to pay $2.50? When you press confirm on your TV, at some point a media company is going to give you a chance to opt out really seamlessly for a small amount of money because they're not getting a lot of money from advertising. What is the cost of freedom? How many of you, like me, go into Modern Family, go into iTunes and pay $2 or $3 instead of going to abc.com where the download is just as quick and just as robust? But for $2.99, you have a 21-minute uninterrupted episode of Modern Family versus the 30 minutes full of ads that you can't skip now on ABC On Demand. It's happening. All these over-the-top, technologically sophisticated companies with access to cheap capital are figuring out ways to offer subscription-only, ad-free products. The New York Times has just announced it is going to have an online ad-free product. So who does this hurt? Obviously, the first victim is the advertising industrial complex. Advertising is not a growth business. It's hovered somewhere between 1 and 1.5% of GDP for about the last 100 years. It's a good high margin business because there are a lot of inefficiencies. That inability to attribute advertising to sales has been the key to the profitability for the advertising industrial complex for the last 100 years. The same characters, the same actors, have been the biggest advertisers over the course of the last 50 years. And they're companies that are outstanding advertisers. They're great at it. They've mastered these mediums. They figured out a way to take a high caloric paste and convince you that you love your kids more. Choosy moms choose Jif, and they can target people and make you feel more European and more elegant for using a certain dishwashing liquid versus an unbranded dishwashing liquid. They are masters of the medium. However, the best advertisers in the world every year become less meaningful. These are the three biggest advertisers over the last 50 years, and this is their share of GDP. In sum, being in the game of advertising as your key weapon over the last 50 years has largely been a slow burn down. Another example, Apple versus Samsung. The product that defines our future is smartphones. This is the thing we are most attached to. It's also highly branded. You likely pick your phone based on what you want to say about yourself in terms of the model and the brand. One company is clearly beating up another. Apple is responsible or garners the vast majority of the profitability. 92% of the profits of the global smartphone ecosystem go to Apple. And they have reallocated capital out of traditional advertising and put it where? That channel that is supposedly dying, stores. Apple's current lease obligations are $4 billion. Samsung may come out with a better phone in the next 12 months, but it's going to take them decades to try and match the 450 temples of the brand that Apple has constructed over the last 20 years in 18 countries. The new algorithm for building massive shareholder value in this age is to scale a company fast based on digital attributes using cloud computing, network effects so you can get to $1 billion faster than any company in history, then access ridiculously cheap capital, and then take that cheap capital to build analog, boring moats. Facebook is laying broadband pipe and cable across the Atlantic. Fiber, Google is building fiber, laying fiber across America. The same things that help these companies scale make them vulnerable, and they realize it. So Amazon takes e-commerce, cheap revenues, and cheap capital, and builds these very boring analog warehouses. Analog investments are like moats that are hard to get around. Let's reverse engineer further. What is the house that advertising built? The house that advertising built is CPG. They're the best in the world at it. It has been their weapon of choice. If advertising is suffering, these companies are going to suffer, and they are. 90% of the 100 biggest CPG companies in America lost share last year, and 2/3 lost revenue. And this is in the face of categories that are growing. These are great businesses to be in. It just sucks to be big and focused on advertising as your means of building your businesses. Growing businesses, declining share for the big players who have traditionally been dependent upon and deft with traditional advertising tools. They are getting picked apart across every part of their business by startups focusing on subscription, better ingredients, and more innovation focused around new distribution and new products. But taking that capital that traditionally would have gone into very expensive broadcast marketing and focusing on new channels of distribution, better packaging, and at least the imagery or the perception of better product and better quality product. The Honest Company came out of nowhere, subscription-based company, and now gets more keyword searches on Google than the traditional players. Gillette is already finding itself, initially Harry's Shave Club or Dollar Shave Club was a little dog nipping at their heels. Now they wake up and this dog has their entire leg in their mouth. There's a different business model, and that is they're more focused on recurring revenue through subscription programs. One of the pieces of advice I give the kids in my class is get to a business that has recurring revenue. And the industry that's figured this out is software. The beauty sector is a decent analog or proxy for what's taking place. What do L'Oreal and Estee Lauder's fastest growing brands have in common? They have one thing in common. They're not advertising. If you look at the top 15 beauty brands, they are almost all in decline with the exception of the independent brands that are what? Not advertising and pushing more money into new vehicles of consumer discovery and are more agile in terms of their product innovation. The same is true in skincare, where 9 of the top 10 brands declined in share and revenues. Estee Lauder and L'Oreal, the giants of the space, had 53 market share in 2014. In just 1 year, they declined share by 3 points combined. Who is taking that share? Small, agile, product-focused brands that no longer need distribution and capital to get into Macy's, can put up a store on Amazon. These small, independent, long-tail brands are taking share. The total amount of advertising among the top 10 is in decline. 4% may not sound a lot, but that means in about 6 years, their advertising spend could be halved from where it is right now. What are the winners doing? They're focused on new channels of consumer discovery. Instagram is a great example of this. They're figuring out codes of their brand. People think UGC is just throwing up whatever image a user decides to produce as it relates to that product. It's not that at all. The best brands identify very tight brand codes and then go out and do a fantastic job of identifying, distilling, and curating the images that match these very tight brand codes. They are also responding more quickly and more nimbly to product trends. They are tracking day by day, similar to what fast fashion does, trends in beauty, and immediately coming out with products that get buzz, get talked about, and get other points of light for the most important arbiter of success in the history of mankind, the Google algorithm. L'Oreal buys 61,000 keywords on Google. It has approximately a 0.3% share of organic search listings versus NYX, the other company they own that is more focused on product agility and being responsive to the marketplace, who buys much fewer keywords but gets much greater organic listing because influencers that Google has identified as being influencers are talking about their products more often. They're also making the same reallocation that Apple has made. They are taking money out of broadcast and they are putting it into vertical retail. One of the biggest myths out there is that stores are dying. That is just total bullshit. Stores aren't dying, the middle class is dying. The store has never been stronger. It's the middle class that's getting the crap kicked out of it. This is a Google map of Covent Garden. Look at how many beauty stores have replaced traditional retail and traditional luxury brands. They are reallocating capital out of traditional broadcast and taking a page out of the playbook of Apple and opening retail. Automobile, other great advertisers. The 5 biggest advertisers, all of them except Nissan, have lost share. Are you getting a theme here? If you're the largest advertiser in the space, it probably means you're in decline. And the moment the industry begins to recognize this, you're going to see a decline of which we haven't seen before. When all of a sudden, being the biggest advertiser in your space outs you as not being innovative, then you're going to see the taps turn off. Who is making waves? Who is getting the most buzz according to the ultimate arbiter? Tesla. What's different about them? No advertising. When's the last time you saw an ad agency exec on the cover of BusinessWeek? No one cares what they think. These are no longer the thought leaders. The big idea, Don Draper has been killed, drawn, and quartered. These folks no longer have relevance. They are tactical. They are media buyers, but they no longer have a seat at the table. The big idea in advertising is a small idea nobody cares about. What is innovation in the auto industry? It's true innovation. It's not putting Cindy Crawford in a TV ad. It's building a better battery. It's figuring out self-driving technology. Innovation is turned back to innovation. The product is the bomb again. It sounds passé. But all this technology that creates different points of distribution, different ways of utilizing and consuming the product have opened up an entirely new world of product differentiation that product companies and engineers and industrial designers are having a renaissance around trying to figure out new ways to add value. Tesla is reallocating their capital. They spend triple in terms of a ratio of their top line on R&D versus the other traditional automakers. They spend almost no money on traditional marketing or advertising. So who does this help? Clearly, we have a duopoly. We have Facebook and Google grabbing the majority of share and profits of this reallocation of capital, growing 44% and 14% versus flat growth for some other amazing ad-supported media brands. Their market capitalization dwarfs these companies, which gives them the ability, for every one idea a traditional agency or a traditional cable company can try, Facebook or Google can try 10. And the reason why they fail so often is because they can. It's never a bet the ranch. They can do $2 or $3 billion ventures, go play in traffic, and if they don't work, It's just a bump in the road. They don't have to bet the ranch every year on something. They can bet it every month, and they're fine if it doesn't work. The world belongs to Facebook and Google. We saw evidence of this last week. All these news sites start convincing themselves, we need to partner with Google or Facebook, right? Information wants to be free. Let them crawl our data, and then they'll send people to our site. The media industry has literally took a gun and shot its feet by letting Google crawl their data. That was the stupidest thing. Information does not want to be free. Information wants to be scarce and expensive. Bloomberg doesn't buy into information wants to be free. Do you think they said, oh wait, information wants to be free. We're getting $25,000 for a terminal with some reheated data from the financial markets. Oh no, what, but information wants to be free? Information doesn't want to be, but the print industry bought into this lie. And then what have they done? Just a short 10 years later, they said, I know, we now need to partner with Facebook. Let's go on and do instant articles and let people stay on the platform, and we'll get a ton of exposure for our brands. They literally took the gun, took it away from their feet, and put it in their mouth. We have learned nothing. And then what does Facebook decide? We've figured out that the algorithm for sticky content so we can sell you more ads is to show you more pictures of your friends' babies. So overnight, they change the algorithm, and boom, new sites are all of a sudden their traffic is down 40% because they bought into the same BS lie and put their future in the hands of another company. These aren't bad people, but they're focused on their own shareholder value, not ensuring that the New York Times or USA Today gets distribution. I find that advertising on Facebook and Google sucks less. Whereas, and this is from when I watch broadcast TV, if there's targeting here, Modern Family is telling me something. 1, I definitely have restless leg syndrome. 2, I love light beer. 3, I am bipolar and I'm in the market for an Android phone. This summarizes all the targeting that is happening on broadcast television. It is 98% of what you see in traditional broadcast media is totally irrelevant to you as an individual. There is nothing resembling targeting taking place. There is a celebrity death match showing up between digital and television. Newspapers, magazines, and radio are dying, and they are about to run into each other. It is going to be digital versus television, and we're betting on digital that is growing faster. Digital marketing is a fantastic business as long as you are Facebook or Google. They control 90 cents on every dollar of this reallocation. The other 10% is being fought over by 3,500 ad tech companies. Australia is a decent metaphor for what might happen across the rest of the advertising ecosystem. Digital is obviously growing faster than traditional media. We have a total spend of $13 billion going to $16 billion from 2010 to 2020, so growing about 2 or 3% a year. But what's interesting here is if you look at global tech's share of the media pie in Australia, it's grown from $1.5 billion to 10, meaning that the pie, the traditional media, the advertising industrial complex, the newspapers, radios, magazines, the pie they are fighting over has gone from $12 billion in 2010 to $6.5 billion. Traditional marketing is an awful place to bet your career right now. Why? You'd rather be good and at a company that's growing than amazing at a company that is in decline. In sum, the long tail has changed. So the long tail is getting shorter, if you will, around technology. There's fewer and fewer players aggregating more and more of the spoils. But if you're in a non-technology-driven industry, like CPG or beauty, the long tail is getting longer, and there's fragmentation. Consolidation in technology, fragmentation in consumer-related businesses. So if you're in technology, a fantastic business is as long as you work for the 1 or 2 winners. The opportunity in consumer is actually to find smaller brands. There are now 2,000 craft breweries that are doing fairly well. Fragmentation on the consumer side, consolidation on the technology side. What does the future look like? We're going to make some predictions, and we believe, like Eisenhower, who said plans are worthless, but planning is everything. We believe predictions are worthless, but predicting is fun. We believe this year is the last gasp for broadcast media with the sugar high of the Olympics and the presidential election. The presidential election so far bears us out. The person who raised the most money for broadcast television did not do that well, whereas the online indicators of success seem to be so far indicating who wins. We believe, and there's some bias here, that ultimately The election probably falls blue here. Why? Because the majority of technologically literate people, for some reason in Washington, about 70 to 80% of them seem to be on one side, not the other. So value will transfer from broadcast media to Facebook and Google. Digital media will be the worst place to work in the world unless you work for Facebook and Google. We believe the big agency conglomerates will split into good bank, bad bank. They'll have good revenue and bad revenue. They'll split up like bad banks. I think the public is going to call for the breakup of Facebook and Google. I think these companies pose more threat to our society than big banks ever have. 1.1 billion people have their Facebook app open at this moment. That means your mic is on. Basically, Facebook has weaponized 1 billion people and is listening at a scale that no spy agency has ever been able to achieve. If that sounds paranoid, I am. I love being a can. I appreciate that they invited me. I think if you have one of these logos on your card, you're going to be okay, but you're going to make less money, and someone younger is going to be given your job at 80% of the salary. I think there's going to be incredible juniorization. If you're carrying a card of an ad tech company, I think it's going to be chaos, and your life is going to be a ton of anxiety and stress over the next 24 months. And I think if you work for either Google or Facebook, your beach party at Cannes is going to get bigger and bigger. Keep in mind, though, we get it wrong all the time. My name is Scott Galloway. I appreciate your time. Our next speaker